Hey, 8D Recaps here. Today, let's dive into a 2014 action, drama, sci-fi film called Automata. Spoiler alert, so be cautious. One day, police officer Wallace encounters a robot in the ghetto fixing itself, and he shoots it in shock. Meanwhile, Jacques Vauquin, an insurance investigator for ROC, wraps up his last case involving a robot accused of killing a dog. He heads home to his pregnant wife, Rachel, who suggests getting a domestic pilgrim. However, Jacques is stuck reminiscing about a beach from his childhood. Later, Jacques is called to the police morgue to check on a robot. He's skeptical when told it was found repairing itself. The forensic technician proves it's been heavily modified, a complex job suggesting a skilled clocksmith's involvement. She hands Jack the robot's kernel and notes it lacks the second protocol, which is deemed impossible. The next day, Jack reports his findings to his boss, Robert Bold, who's also skeptical about a robot without the second protocol. Despite Jack's burnout request and desire for a coastal transfer, Robert denies it and instructs him to handle the situation. Following serial numbers from the self-repairing robot and its altered parts, Jack reaches the city desert wall. He suspects a worker might be behind the alterations, using robots from the area. A worker mentions parts belonging to Unit 206, still functional. While checking its charging station, Jack notices 206 watching him and decides to follow. Entering a restricted ghetto beyond the wall, Jack faces gunfire from guards. He hides in a shipping container and finds 206 holding a box. Questions about the box go unanswered as 206 sets itself on fire. The burned robot is examined at ROC's labs, revealing it's also smuggling tools and parts. Moreover, it has a rare nuclear battery that could power a robot indefinitely. When powered up again, the unit's circuits burn out upon questioning. Robert blames Jack for the damage, but agrees to the transfer if Jack can prove a clocksmith is overriding the second protocol. Returning home, Jack shares the news with Rachel, who rejects the idea and asks to be left alone. Jack investigates the area where the first robot was shot and finds a hidden bag with another nuclear battery. The next day, he meets with Wallace and Ellis to learn more about what they saw that day. Wallace agrees to assist Jack in finding the clocksmith in the ghetto, with the condition of sharing the proceeds from selling the battery on the black market. They visit a red light house where they encounter Cleo, a modified robot designed for intimate relations with humans, even capable of causing pain if desired. Wallace, disturbed, shoots Cleo and leaves the building, revealing that it was intentional. He advises Jack to wait for Cleo to be taken to the clocksmith and threatens him with a knife, emphasizing the importance of the promised money. Following Wallace's plan, Jack tracks Cleo's owner to the repair shop. There, he meets Dr. Susan Dupre, who denies being the one who altered Cleo. Jack leaves the burned robot's kernel with her, promising his nuclear battery if she can identify the modifier. Returning home, he sends a report to Robert about his findings, but ROC intercepts the message. Chief of Security Vernon Conway delivers the report to CEO Dominic Hawk. After Hawk orders Conway to handle the situation, Jack receives two messages. One from ROC, declaring the case closed and instructing him to return the kernel, and another from Dupre, informing him of a discovery. Jacques visits Dupre at her lab, where he discovers Cleo repairing herself by combining the shot kernel with hers. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted by the arrival of two kids who shoot Dupre and pursue Jacques. He manages to escape through the back door. Outside, Jacques mistakenly enters a car, thinking it's his cabbie, but Cleo is actually driving. They are pursued by another car that hits and shoots at them. Eventually, they reach the desert, and both cars crash into a maze of stanchions, resulting in the death of the pursuers and injuries to Jack. The next morning, Jack wakes up and asks Cleo for help. Although she initially leaves, Cleo returns a few hours later with three other altered robots. Together, the robots pull Jack, who is seated in a car seat, through the desert as they traverse it. Despite Jack's attempts to order them back to the city, the robots insist it's impossible and that they are headed to a safer place. Unable to change their course, Jack decides to leave on his own, but the robots, bound by the first protocol, follow him to protect him. When Jack faints, they place him back in the chair, feed him worms, and construct a condenser to collect water for him to drink. Jack realizes the robots salvaged various items, including the nuclear battery, from the cars. Meanwhile, in the city, Rachel goes into labor, heading to the hospital. At ROC, Hawk and Conway inform Robert that Jacques is responsible for a new wave of altered robots. However, Robert, still trusting Jacques' loyalty to the company, remains unconvinced. In the desert, Jacques asks Cleo for the salvaged items bag. He discovers a flare gun, keeping it for himself, and his pager, which he uses to send a message to Robert before the battery dies. Robert receives the message and sends Wallace to rescue Jack. Wallace and Ellis drive to the desert, and Jack spots their car. Believing they are there to rescue him, he fires his flare gun to signal his location before asking the robots to stop walking. However, he is struck by Wallace as soon as he steps off the car, when the police officers catch up with them. When Jack hands the nuclear battery to Ellis, the robots request him to stop. In response, Wallace begins shooting at them, successfully destroying 2 of them. As he aims for Cleo, Jack intervenes, killing Wallace with the flare gun. Ellis, frightened, flees in his car, refusing to take Jack back to the city. Helpless, Jack watches as the remaining 2 robots salvage parts from the destroyed pilgrims before departing. Realizing he won't be carried on the chair anymore, Jack scavenges what he can from Wallace's pockets and follows the robots. While camping, he informs them of having another battery and offers it in exchange for transportation to the city. Cleo explains they'll reach their destination the next day, and Jack might find a vehicle there. Meanwhile, Hawk and Conway visit Robert at his home and bring him back to ROC to hear Ellis's report. Hawk reveals that the first pilgrim was a quantum brain without security protocols, becoming too intelligent and independent. The last task assigned to it before deactivation was to program the 2 existing protocols. This uniqueness makes them unbreakable, as they were not created by humans and are beyond human comprehension. Sent by ROC, Robert, Conway, and 2 officers head to the desert with the mission to find and eliminate Jacques before evolving robots pose more challenges beyond human understanding. The following day, Jack and the 2 robots reach an abandoned factory, where Jack finally encounters the clocksmith responsible for the alterations. To his astonishment, he discovers it's another pilgrim that has evolved independently. Inside the factory, Jack finds a table with all the smuggled parts neatly arranged, forming a peculiar model. As Jack ventures outside to search for a vehicle, the robots start working on the model, missing only one crucial part, a nuclear battery. Despite finding a destroyed car, Jack's hope begins to dwindle. Standing at the cliff's edge, seemingly contemplating jumping, he is joined by the clocksmith robot. After a philosophical discussion, the robot reveals its desire to reach a radioactive area inaccessible to humans, requiring one final thing. Understanding its need, Jack hands over his nuclear battery. As night falls, Robert's team discovers Wallace's body, deciding to wait. Conway receives a message about 2 additional individuals joining them. A few hours later, another car arrives, bringing Rachel and her newborn daughter. Robert, angered and refusing to use Rachel as bait, is halted by Conway. In the ensuing struggle, Robert shoots Conway in the shoulder, and Conway retaliates with a shot of his own. Meanwhile, Jack, after enjoying a night of drinking and dancing with Cleo, observes the pilgrims completing their creation. Utilizing the nuclear battery, they breathe life into an animal-like robot. Jack falls asleep, but is awakened the next morning by the sound of an engine. Grateful for the robot's repairs, he uses the car they fixed to depart, bidding them farewell. However, midway through his journey, he halts the car to vomit and notices scavenger birds, leading him to discover Robert. In his final moments, Robert accuses Jack of betrayal and discloses that Rachel is in danger. Conway and his team reach the abandoned factory, opening fire on the robots, prompting one of the pilgrims to jump off the cliff. Conway, dissatisfied with the clocksmith pilgrim's refusal to obey, shoots it and retrieves its kernel. Threatening to destroy Cleo, Jack arrives in a car just in time. Despite gunfire, he plows through, enabling Rachel to stab her captor and escape. Jack hits 2 men with the car, shoots a third with a shotgun, and enters the factory. While Conway is distracted by the animal-like robot, accusing Jack of betrayal, Conway aims his shotgun, but the animal-like robot intervenes, pushing Conway off the cliff. Jack, initially wary, finds Rachel and the baby. As the couple reunites, Cleo, moved by the baby's touch, stops crying. Jack helps Cleo and the animal-like robot cross the cliff before bidding Cleo farewell. United with his family, Jack leaves in the car and eventually reaches the coast, reigniting his hope for a brighter future.